I save the world.
Okay,
I
Reverend
save
Tony,
the world.
thank you so much.
I save
It's
the
always
world.
wonderful to be here,
I save the
and it's great to see everyone's all our mighty companions, and all the blessings of light that we have here today. Um, so my talk for today is titled "Ask Not What the Holy Spirit Can Do for You, but ask what you can do for the Holy Spirit." And it's kind of funny how these things work, because we all get, whenever we, in some function, our function is called to do some kind of presentation of A Course in Miracles, whether it's a talk or a class or whatever it might be. We're all guided, and the Holy Spirit works through our own lens. So even though we're one, we do all, even the Course talks about in the preference, talks about the frame of reference. And as many of you know, I've taught social studies for many years, and so a lot of my talks have some reference around history. And I've kind of riffed off this famous line that is part of history. In fact, it's part of the inauguration address of President John F. Kennedy, which he gave when he became was inaugurated president in 1961. And what's interesting about this talk, or his inaugural address, is if you read it, it's actually pretty spiritual in its values. Now, first of all, the one thing I want to say is that let's take a look at inauguration. What does that mean? So an inauguration is a ceremony to mark the beginning of something. And in the case of our country, whenever we have a new president elected, there is a time when he or she or they get sworn in. And I know in the future we will have a she, and I have confidence in that, and a they, if that is their preferred preference going forward. So it's something that we do to inaugurate. And, I was thinking, the kind of association here is interesting, because in a way, Sunday is the beginning of the week. And so I guess somewhere along the line, folks considered, when they had church services, that Sunday would be a good day to do it, because going to church on Sunday would be a good way to inaugurate the week, with attempting to set our values high, our spiritual values high. So it's kind of nice that we have this opportunity to link the two together. So when Kennedy gave a speech on January 21st, 1961, it's kind of interesting what he said. This famous line is this: "And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." And then there's a further expression. The next line reads as this: "My fellow citizens of the world, ask not what America will do for you, but what together we can do for the freedom of man." Now, of course, that was in 1961, so we can look at it also from the context of the freedom of humanity to make it more inclusive. And what comes to mind is if you read the different aspects of this speech, it's really an amazing, amazing speech that actually includes references to spiritual values and, in fact, God. Here's another line from that speech. Kennedy says, "And yet the same revolutionary beliefs for which our forebears fought are still at issue around the globe. The belief that the rights of man come not from generosity of the state, but from the hands of God." And so throughout the speech, if you read it, there's all of these references to the role of this country as being a beacon of light, but is also attempting to extend its hand to friend and to foe to work toward peace. As some of you might know, at the time of this speech, the world was kind of in a perilous place. There was, in fact, an arms race taking place. There were forces in the Soviet Union and the United States that were pretty bellicose or warlike, and they wanted to. They kind of wanted to spread their dominance throughout the world. And in each country, actually, in each nation, there were also those like Kennedy who were more moderate and wanted to use the advances of science for the good of humanity, not for the ill. And in fact, during Kennedy's term, the Cuban Missile Crisis came about. And in some ways, we were inspired that Kennedy was in office because he desperately, with the help of his brother and some other advisors, and for those in the Kremlin as well, there was a moderate faction in the Kremlin, and they worked together for a peaceful solution to that particular problem. So, in some ways, we're blessed to have, at times, leaders who do recognize that behind all of the external politics, there is a spirituality that unites us all. There's a commonness that unites us all. And this is one of the things that we seek for. Now, when we take a look at A Course in Miracles, from the perspective of, just trying to work miracles in our own lives, it's kind of interesting. When A Course in Miracles was first presented to Helen, we know that Helen and Bill were the first practitioners. And we know that because we can read in the text itself that they were given the opportunity, after Bill expresses frustration, to choose again. And with their choice to choose again, we were gifted with A Course in Miracles, which of course we all manifested. As I kind of go through my life and I see things happening, and both within myself and others, I realize that miracles are happening all the time. In Miracle Principle number 25 says, miracles are part of an interlocking chain of forgiveness, which when completed is the atonement. Atonement works all the time and in all the dimensions of time. And so when we take a look at this inspired quote, I think from the Holy Spirit, ask not what the Holy Spirit can do for you, ask for what you can do for the Holy Spirit. What we're really saying is a couple things. That sometimes we open our minds to the extent that we realize that the miracles we're asking for are really miracles that will benefit not only us, but everyone else we come in contact with. That's what it's talking about when it says the interlocking chain of forgiveness. So when we give ourselves to the service of the Holy Spirit, we're really saying that the miracles that I aspire to are going to be miracles which will benefit others. And I've had some kind of personal recent experiences along the same line. The first thing I was thinking about was just being kind of like a first-hand witness to Reverend Tony's experience with COVID-19, which he spoke about in more detail. And, what I saw was like the traditional healthcare system kind of did what it does to a lot of people that I talk about the traditional healthcare system. Sometimes it works, part way, and sometimes it really doesn't do a great job. And what I saw was, Reverend Tony, following his guidance and, against a lot of pressure, deciding to take an alternative path guided by the Holy Spirit. And that was his choice. And then what I saw, just as again as a witness, is I saw all these other people showing up in his life, whether it was people giving him moral support, or it was the two guys that brought him home from the hospital on the stretcher. They were really, I was here, and they were just really nice and kind, and you know, or it was the doctor that provided him with an alternative treatment plan, or other friends who helped get the medicine that he needed, other people checking in with him, and so on and so forth. And all the while, Reverend Tony followed his guidance, and other people just kind of stepped in. And so here was that interlocking chain of forgiveness. And so it was an opportunity for everyone to kind of do their bit, but also having an opportunity to see that we were in service to one another. Today's reading says, "The gentle service that you give the Holy Spirit is service to yourself." And so we know there's no separation, but sometimes we need to have an experience of that. And recently, actually this past week, I did have this kind of experience. There is, in my work, on Friday afternoons, we have this kind of important meeting that takes place. We break our students down into groups. I have a number of students, 6 or 7 students, that are in my advisory, and I oversee their goals. And then a clinician, a therapist, comes into our group as well, and we take an hour and we work with each student on their goals. Now, these, since the type of students I work have mental health challenges and pretty significant, depression, anxiety, and sometimes it's severe behavior issues related to violence, or not able to attend school, all kinds of different things, not able to focus, things that are really significant. And it hasn't worked well this whole entire year, to be quite frankly, or for much of the year. There's been lots of problems with this process, which pre-COVID I worked pretty well. And so some of the things that were happening were, there was some division amongst the clinicians and the teachers about how this ought to work. The students at times were in open rebellion of this process. They didn't believe in it. They didn't believe in the point system that when you get a goal, and then you're assessed in the goal in each activity period of the day, whether it's school or their therapeutic groups. And so there was like a lot of hostility taking place. And here, this process that was meant to be supportive had kind of turned badly. And so I think it was Wednesday of this week, I was having trouble getting to sleep, and I noticed that my mind was racing, or worried about this goals group on Friday. And I just had this moment. I said, Holy Spirit, I just need a miracle with the goals group. I need to let it go. And that's all I did. And then I forgot about it. I completely forgot about it. And I actually was able to get to sleep. And so Friday comes, and we were about to do goals group. It's 1:00 on Fridays, and we were getting ready to kind of do it. And I had totally forgotten that I asked for this miracle. And so a couple things happened, like I noticed these things afterwards, but I decided to change the room that we were in. We had been in this big room, and I just asked to join with another group because our room was too big, and there was another activity going in that room at that time, so it was just too distracting. And I also realized that because I've been a teacher at the school a long time, I had more experience doing the goals group. So I just stepped up and I talked to the students before we did the goals group, and I reviewed expectations of, how the goal group is supposed to function and so on and so forth. And the students, participated because I asked them, okay, what is the purpose of the goals group? How do we, kind of participate? And so they chimed in, listening and providing good feedback and so on and so forth. So it was a good start. And the miracle that happened then is we started on the goals group, and the students were just very open to our suggestions. And like I said, I kind of led the group, and I kind of made suggestions and asked probing questions with the students. And what's interesting is that in weeks previous, where there had been a lot of resistance and there had been a lot of complaints and a lot of arguments, that resistance dissipated. And what was remarkable is that almost every student took the suggestions that myself or the other clinicians, actually there were two clinicians, two therapists in the room, made, and or students. And the students participated in a very positive way with the process. So we got through it. We actually had more students because we combined basically two advisory groups, and we got through it in an hour, which was amazing. And afterwards, I was just feeling really good about the whole process. And then it dawned on me. That, previously, that couple nights before, I had asked for the miracle, but then totally forgot about it. Course in Miracles says in Miracle Principle number 5, miracles are habits and should be involuntary. They should not be under conscious control. Consciously selected miracles can be misguided. So this is exactly what happened, right? Is that I had asked for the miracle and then forgotten it because, probably in my case, consciously trying to impose a regime of miracles on the situation wouldn't have worked. And so what I was very aware of is that when I was doing the process, and I've done it for a number of years, but it's much better just to make suggestions and to be open-minded and ask, well, I wonder if you'd want to work on this, your anxiety, or I wonder if you want to work on your depression in this way, and phrasing it in open-ended questions really helps. And so, giving praise, being very open-minded, letting them have agency and options, is very, very important. And if we are honest about it, these students are anywhere from 13 to 18, let's say, in this case. But it's probably often just the same way the Holy Spirit works with us, right? I've never looked this up, but how many times does the Course in Miracles use the word gentle? In gentle laughter, or gently reminds us, in gentle service. And so if we're kind of aware of things, we can see that this takes place. Course in Miracles says, as guardians of darkness and of ignorance, look to them only for fear, for what they keep obscure is fearful, but let them go. And what was fearful will be so no longer. And so, when we're in the midst of turmoil, which I was, and which I've seen other folks do, and of course, if you turn on the news, you can see that from many, many approaches, sometimes it can feel really, like you got hit by a truck. It's like, wow, this situation, this circumstance is really, really hard and despairing and impossible. But we have to be willing to let our judgments about it go. We have to be willing to kind of have faith. And we have to be willing to surrender these perceptions to the Holy Spirit. We do have to feel our feelings. We do have to acknowledge our thoughts. But we don't have to make them real. And herein kind of lies, I think, the essence of A Course in Miracles. When we let go of the judgment and the intensity towards which we are facing a situation and just open our minds, then the miracles can happen. And if we're smart and insightful, what we realize is those miracles are happening not just for us, but as the Holy Spirit would have them. The miracle always involves others. Sometimes if you're maybe perhaps in the role as president or as head of a big corporation, whatever it might be, maybe more people are impacted. But at whatever level we happen to be, whatever leadership position we have, and we all have them, or even in the participant level of our connections to other people, we're always in service to the Holy Spirit. And that shift of emphasis from not asking just for ourselves, but having the realization that we are the other and that we are in service always of the Holy Spirit, will have profound impacts in the lives of ourselves and the others that we love. And so today I say to you, ask not what the Holy Spirit can do for you, but ask what you can do for the Holy Spirit. Thank you. That's my talk for today.
Woke up my eyes to see. Woke up my head to peace. Woke up my heart to be free. Woke up our world, you and me. I've opened up my heart, I'm at the start. I save the world, I save the world, I save the world, I save